Hello, everyone. It's Coleman. I am a certified educator in personal finance, and in today's lesson, we are going to cover a little bit of the basics of debt repayment.
So, financial crises and debt problems often go hand in hand. A lot of people will borrow money to get by, and they may fall behind on payments, whatever it may be. The first step in tackling debt is establishing an accurate inventory of who you owe and how much you owe. So, as you can see in the handout that I gave you, you can go to page 7, and that is a just basic kind of overview allowing you to write down who you owe, how much you owe, and kind of really start keeping track of your outstanding credit going forward. If you don't have recent statements, a lot of people may say, "Oh, I didn't get it in the mail." Feel free to call your creditors and ask them for the most recent up to date kind of statements. That way, you'll have a better understanding of exactly where you are, how much you owe, and like I said, where you owe it to, and it'll help you establish kind of a plan of attack that you can go forward with and really kind of ease some stress involved with debt repayment. Um, so accounts in good standing. If you're able to keep some of your accounts in good standing or all of your accounts in good standing, they don't require any urgent or immediate action. However, keep in mind that if you owe a significant amount, it could still take years and years for you to pay it back. So if you are able to kind of pay more than the minimum payment, we would always recommend that, but never overextend yourself if it will put you in a deeper hole with another creditor or with some of your essential life expenses. Okay, so one of the best ways to accelerate debt repayment is to pay extra. So you should only, as I said, you should only do this if you're comfortably meeting the ends meet of all your debts and other obligations, be it rent, mortgage, food for you and your family, those sort of things. So if you are comfortably meeting all those and able to, we would always recommend paying a little bit more than the minimum payment. That way you can kind of accelerate the process of paying it back, and the long term payments will be less due to the interest not being able to compound as much and keep building up. So that's one quick way that you can go about it. Another way is to try and lower your interest rates. Uh, there's actually a lot of available ways to go about kind of getting the ball rolling on lowering your interest rate. Sometimes, but not always, a creditor may be willing to give you a lower interest rate just because you call. That may, like I said, may not always be the case, but if you call them, say, "Hey, I've been really chipping away at these for 6 months. I'm showing good on time payments." They may be willing to lower your interest rate a little bit, so you're paying back less over time, and in the long run, saving yourself some money. Another good way is if you have a good credit score, you may want to look at transferring some of those balances to a lower interest rate credit card. So if you have a credit card at a significantly lower interest rate and you've been making great payments and your credit score is great, you may want to kind of consolidate them in that direction. That way, your long term payments will also be lower and your savings will raise. Another option in lowering your interest rates is to create a debt management plan. Uh, Through these, some creditors will allow you to close your accounts and give you a lower interest rate as long as you agree to go through some sort of counseling. This could be a great benefit to you going forward. If you need the accounts open, it might not be your best available option, but it is one way to kind of lower that interest rate, start chipping away at your payments, and really kind of get back on track. So, if you don't mind, let's flip to the next slide on debt repayment and we'll keep going from there. Okay, on this next page, we're going to talk a little bit more about debt repayment. We're going to begin with delinquent accounts. So, for delinquent accounts, you're going to want to start tackling those right away. If you fall far enough behind, it is possible it'll be charged off and sent to a collections agency, which can considerably damage your credit report. When you fall behind, the payments you make, or sorry, miss, are usually added to your minimum required payment. If you can't make that full amount, you should definitely contact your creditors right away. In some circumstances, they'll be able to kind of establish a payment plan over a few months. Even in some instances, you'll be able to do a lump sum payment for considerably less, in some examples, than the full payment that you are owing, and you can work it off and get that account cleared right away. when calling a creditor that you may be delinquent on, you're definitely going to want to stay calm and polite, because it can't hurt your chances to be nice to the person that may be willing to help you out in the long run. With that being said, if you run into a person that may not be so willing to help, you can either ask for a supervisor, you could try calling back at another time, or you could try shooting in a letter, and see if you have any luck that way. With that being said, you can also improve your credit standing by continuing to catch up on these payments. And it's always a sign of good faith to the creditor if you've consistently made your payments on time and you're trying to rebuild and really get back on your feet. And that none of that can hurt going forward if you're trying to get either a lower interest rate, establish a payment plan, or try and lump sum payment to remove the account. Uh, Once an account goes to a collections agency, unfortunately, the damage has already been done. So, with that being said, those kind of accounts won't take precedence over mortgage or rent payments that you need to make monthly to stay where you're living, but that doesn't mean you should neglect them over time. If they sit in collections for too long, you are still able to be sued. Currently, in the state of Massachusetts, the statute of limitations for a collections agency to sue you for unpaid debt is 6 years. It varies state by state, so it's definitely worth looking into if you may be in a problem of that sort. Um, some of these collections agencies are willing to kind of also establish these kind of payment plans where you may be able to pay over the course of a couple weeks, a couple months. They may take lump sum payments as well to remove the collections account from your credit report. But with that being said, always get a debt settlement agreement in writing. That way, you can't be sued again after, even if you've already established a relationship with the agency and you're going forward with the payments as you originally planned. It's always best to have it in writing just to protect yourself. Uh, in terms of lump sum payment options, if you have an outstanding debt of, just for example, $1,000, and you've had a hard time kind of establishing some savings to get back and make that payment, some of these agencies have been known to take as little as 25, 30% of the grand total of the money owed. So that is an available option. It's not necessarily a guaranteed option, but it's always worth looking into by contacting your creditors and your collection agencies ahead of time and really trying to establish a relationship with them and ease the whole process going forward. And any measure of good faith in these kind of circumstances is only there to help you. Another point I would like to make before we move on is avoid debt settlement agencies at all costs. A lot of you may have seen some of the late night infomercial phone numbers. Call this debt settlement agency and we'll just completely eliminate your debt. We'll remove it from your credit score. Those sort of promises. And a lot of times they'll charge a extremely high fee, when in the long run they may actually not be doing anything for you at all. And at the end of the day, you are still the one that is responsible for it. So if the debt settlement agency charges you and doesn't help you kind of repay your collections accounts, you still would be the one targeted to be sued. So always keep that in mind going forward. And if you can, avoid them at all costs. A lot of times they'll do things that you can just do on your own for free, but they'll charge you an exorbitant price, and it may not even be a benefit to you in the long run at all.
All right, and that'll wrap up lesson 2 in debt repayment. As promised, here is my contact information, and you can feel free to reach out with any further questions, or if you need a little bit of a deeper explanation on any of these topics, feel free, and I am more than willing to help. We hope you stay tuned and tune in for episode 3, which is going to cover a little bit about rebuilding and repairing credit.